Welcome everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Johannah, also go by Joe, and I have Jason here as well, kind of in the background. He's our Chief Product Officer. And we wanted to put together a webinar where we go over some of those little tips that sometimes get missed. So I've been working with our clients for a while now, and I get to the privilege of talking to people and gathering information and ways that our clients are using TimeZest that maybe we didn't think about, or all that good stuff. And we've had some awesome new features come out in the last several months. And the big one is our 365. So we really wanted to, we're still spreading the awareness that it's there and that this is something that you can leverage. So we wanted to go over that. Let's move on to the next slide here. So, like I said, we have a few things I want to kind of cover with you guys. And then, of course, it's going to start flipping pages on its own accord here for me. So the first thing is, like I said, the new 365 integration, how we can leverage that in our day-to-day work and what it entails. And then the other thing is just a quick tip on managing URLs. I think most people are pretty used to that. Other platforms have URLs that you use in different locations, but I've had a few times now where customers have come through and asked questions, so I wanted to make sure that we just give a little tip there. Shareable URLs, they've been around a while, but different ways to think about using them. And then a new feature is our URL generation inside the pod, so I wanted to kind of go over that and give you a little workaround with that one as well, which is scheduling appointments for a client. And then URL-based scheduling has been around TimeZest longer than I have, but I think it gets overlooked a lot, and I wanted to kind of cover how you can leverage that to really automate some responses and increase your customer service by using that. And then we have appointment type specific messaging. This is another one. I think it gets missed a lot, so I thought it would be great to kind of go over with you guys and make sure you know it's there and available. And then we're able to schedule with multiple appointments inside of a ticket. And so touch on that, as well as we've made some changes to the help center. So if you haven't touched it in the last 4 months or so, I wanted to make sure that you knew what was available to you. And a big part of this is I really wanted to have that kind of hive mind connection with you guys. How are you leveraging TimeZest in your processes that maybe is outside of the box that we can share as a community and all benefit from that? And then there's going to be plenty of time for questions either to myself or Jason. And then we have Jerways in the chat managing that. If you have questions, I do ask that you put it in the Q&A box because it's easier for me to kind of scan through and see those. And then the guys will kind of filter those as well to make sure we can answer as many as possible. Okay. All right. So the Outlook integration, this it's a big one. I've been very excited to see it grow and develop, and we've been making little tweaks and changes to it to make it even better. And it's one that I think people are starting to hear that we have, but I really want to make sure everyone knows that it's out there. So what it allows you to do is to read both your PSA calendar and Outlook to make sure there's no conflicting appointments. It also allows resources who don't primarily work out of the PSA to use TimeZest to schedule their appointments. And this also allows a resource who maybe doesn't use the PSA, so they work primarily out of Outlook, and one who uses the PSA calendar to both be on the same meeting using panel scheduling. So it's pretty powerful, and we want to make sure you guys know exactly how you can use it. So the first thing I want to talk through is once you integrate it under integrations, You then have to set it up underneath the individual user. By default, it'll stay as your PSA calendar is the primary, but you'll want to go through if that resource does primarily work out of Outlook and make sure it's set up. So I just have a little clip here because live internet is unpredictable. So if we go to users and configure and then calendar, you can see here that we have it set up. So what you're seeing here is it's reading both the Office 365 and the managed calendar, but it's writing the appointments to the 365 calendar. So in this configuration, the 365 is this resource's primary calendar. Now, if your technician is working out of manage primarily or auto task, you'd want it to be writing to manage your auto task. So for your help desk team members, maybe where they're working out of tickets all the time, they're working off their manage calendar, having it write to manage, but still reading their Outlook calendar is going to give you the best experience in keeping everything in the ticket. Okay. So how this works with shareable URLs is pretty awesome. So if you have a shareable URL set up to create an activity or to do, there's nothing you need to change. The resources who are set up to be where Outlook is their primary calendar, it will automatically, instead of creating an appointment or I'm sorry, an activity or a to-do, it will create a 365 appointment. And for those resources where manage or Autotask is their primary calendar, it will default to creating that activity or to-do. Okay. And Nicole, I see your question here. Can you have it write to both? No, it writes to one or the other. So you'll choose which one's your primary calendar. And then if you have the sync between your PSA and Outlook, it'll write it over there for you. Okay. There shouldn't be any concerns, Brian, if this sync is already in play. Okay. So when we use the shareable URL, it's going to look the same. You will have the calendar where the client will see your calendar, pick the time. They're going to insert their information, get the confirmation page, all the same. But then instead of it creating, a service ticket or an activity, it's just going to put it on their calendar. So the client will get a meeting invitation that goes on their calendar as usual, and so will the resource. When you are the resource who is set up to have 365 as your primary calendar, you'll see that it will give you in the invite, it'll give you who the contact is, what it's about, the date and time. And then if it's an online meeting, you'll have the link right there to join the Zoom or Teams call. And then on the client's view, you can see their invite will have the button to join the meeting or the reschedule and cancel button if you have that feature turned on. Okay. Let's make sure if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A so that we can really filter those and I can see those better because I'm not keeping a good eye on chat right now. Okay. Now let's go over your questions. Any questions about 365, how it works or anything like that? Will the location field ever populate the meeting link so that the join button works in Outlook? I think right now, Jason, if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of an API thing where we're unable to do a join button in Outlook for the user.
Yeah, at the moment we do set the join button using a bit of reverse engineering, but it's not always possible. It's not an API that Microsoft makes available to third parties. So we do what we can, but it doesn't always work.
Okay, sorry, when we switched over, it muted me. So Cody's question is, if we do a 365 and Teams integration, do we need to have it open to external app connectors? Also, do we have a setup integration under each profile or just under the admin account? So you're going to set it up under an admin account, and it's going to pull in associate the different users, I believe is what you mean. I'm not understanding the external apps connection. It's if you integrate Teams or 365, we'll use those. Maybe Jason, you understand that a little bit
yeah,
better.
I'll just jump in. Yeah, we do need to have access. So TimeZest is set up as what Microsoft calls an enterprise application, which is just an application that you grant access to your Office 365 tenant. So yes.
Okay. Can you group scheduling for people across, for people who are only in Office 365, both Autotask? I think what you're talking about, Brian, is panel scheduling, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, you can have, so you can have a resource who's using Autotask as well as someone who's using 365 be on the same meeting, which is what we call our panel scheduling. I believe that's what you were talking about. Am I wrong there? Okay, all right, perfect. Any other questions about 365? Nope. Okay. Okay, so one thing that keeps coming into support chat is like, hey, do you have a way to manage URLs? You know, so if you're using shareable URLs, you might have ones that are set up for specific team members, or you might have one for a 30-minute or an hour or different things. And if you're inside your PSA, this is really easy to manage because we have the appointment types drop down. It's easy to do. But when you're using shareable URLs and you're primarily working out of Outlook, it can sometimes get a little hectic using sticky notes and things like that. So this is just something that I started using and I've shared with several clients that found it helpful. So I thought I would bring it here. But you can use inside Outlook a template type add-on and then pretty up your URLs and simply click and it'll insert them. And I've just found that to be a great way to manage those when working primarily out of Outlook. Okay. So the next is shareable URLs. And I think that generally people's first think of, okay, I'm going to stick this in my signature block, but then they stop there. And there's a lot more ways to leverage shareable URLs that's really powerful. And one of those is automate scheduling for large projects. And a way that I recommend doing this, so if you're scheduling out, you know, a large project where you have to schedule with, let's say, 20 or 50 different clients, and you're manually creating all those service tickets and then reaching out in each individual ticket for them to schedule, you could send a bulk email that says, hey, we need to schedule for this update. And then when you use a shareable URL in conjunction with a team for team scheduling, it will auto dispatch those tickets as the clients click on the link and schedule, and it'll come onto your board as a scheduled service ticket that's already assigned and ready to go. So that's one way to use shareable URLs. Another way is you can embed them on your web page. You can do this with iframe. And so let's say you have a support web page. They can submit a ticket there directly because we gather information about, you know, in general, what is this about? And then you use, again, the team scheduling to dispatch that throughout your resources. So if you have, you know, a tier 1 team or something like that, they can take those. Same with your sales team. So you can have those come through and dispatch throughout your sales team for inquiries. Again, like the signature block, that's, I feel like, the first place people go when they think of them. And then you can also, same kind of idea as the website, is use it in marketing emails or campaign emails, where if somebody has more questions or they want to set up a meeting to discuss it further, you can provide a link in there for them to schedule an appointment with the appropriate resources. So a newer feature that we came out with several months ago was URL generation. And I feel like it kind of snuck in there a little bit. And it's not as obvious in ConnectWise as it is in Autotask. So you can see there's two different video clips here. One is in Manage Service Ticket and one is in Autotask. And I wanted to show this to you because I want you to understand how you can do it, but then we're going to talk about just a quick way to kind of leverage it. So in ConnectWise, you actually click on the TimeZest logo and generate, and then it copies that URL to the clipboard. Now, something to keep in mind when you do this is that it is not going to trigger reminders. So you're going to want to maybe manually follow up with this because it's not going to remind the client that they need to schedule. We don't have anything to go off there to start that time. And then you saw in that animation that if the client schedules, or I'm sorry, if the client has received a link or received an invitation and they're like, I don't know where it's at, and you have to resend it, you can go to actions and resend. And we can see that here in the Autotask side. You select the resource and the appointment type. And then for them, they have the drop-down arrow and copy. Okay. And then the same thing, you can go to the actions and the drop-down there, and then select copy URL. If you need to resend the URL for that specific invitation, you don't need to create a new one. Any questions about that? Okay, let's go into this next one, which is scheduling for a client. So we have a feature request out there where you can send like the confirmation email for already decided upon time. And I leverage this copy share or copy the URL to kind of do a workaround for that. So I wanted to show you how you can do that. So if you create the URL and you copy it, there's nothing stopping you as the user to go ahead and paste that into your browser. And this might be helpful when you're already on the phone or on a call with a client. You can select a date and time that works for them. And if you're collecting the phone number, you can plug that in. And when you push schedule, it's actually going to send the confirmation email to the client, right? So they get all the information for the Zoom call or whatever it is, and your ticket updates and says that it's scheduled. And you can see that our status updated and everything as if the client scheduled the meeting themselves. Okay, Brent. Hi, Brent. Is it possible to have TimeZest create a 365 appointment from a shareable URL without creating a ConnectWise managed ticket or with the sync between the two control apps? Yeah, so that's what I was talking about earlier, right? So if 365 is marked as your primary calendar, it's going to bypass the PSA and create that appointment in 365. So for users who don't work out of Manage or Autotask, that's great for them. I hope that answers your question. Okay. Any questions about this? Thanks, Tyler. All right, let's go on. Okay, so URL-based scheduling. Like I said, this has been around since before I joined the team, but I feel like people forget about it and they don't really leverage it or leverage it maybe to take over everything. We want to still have the pod available because the pod is feature rich, right? It is great for those individual uses where you need to schedule a meeting with your client and be really specific. But if you have a situation where it's more bulk, it's more generalized, you can leverage our URL-based scheduling. So you can see here my big yellow arrow is pointing at the SR number. If you're in Autotask, it's going to say ticket number there. but that token right there will speak back to a ticket that was already created. And we use this inside workflows in our PSA. So like a workflow email. And a great example that I have on here is like using for after hours or holidays. So I worked with a client a long time ago where he wanted to have, if a ticket sat in the status of new on his board for more than 2 hours, he wanted an auto response to go out to the client that said, hey, we received your ticket. And then within that email, we put, a URL using the URL-based scheduling for a 15-minute discovery call. And what this did is it allowed the client to feel like their ticket didn't just land into a black hole, and that they were responded to and that they could schedule time to talk through it. So if it was a quick issue, the tech could address it right away. If it was a larger issue, they could gather information and then send a meeting invitation for the appropriate amount of time to resolve it. And so that's a great way to leverage it, as well as for a sales board or something where all the inquiries coming in are pretty simple to disperse, and it's not going to need too much variance. And so you use that in conjunction with a team, and then it'll do the auto dispatching for you. Okay. Okay, next section. Appointment specific messaging. So again, this is another oldie but a goodie, and I feel like it gets missed a lot. So if you've had a call with me, we've probably covered this. Inside the notification message and confirmation message box, you can put plain text messaging in there that will be included inside the email templates for that specific appointment type. So this is great to provide additional information or set expectations for this meeting. So in the notification message box, that's the initial invitation. I think it's great there if this appointment that you're scheduling has specific expectations that you may need to set. So let's say, for example, it's a 2-hour meeting, but the client only really needs to be present for the first 30 minutes, and then the rest is behind the scenes, or maybe they need to not touch the computer while you work on it, whatever it may be. You can set that expectation in that box. And then when they go to choose their time, they already know what they're expecting, and they have that information to go off of. And then in the confirmation message box, you can put specific instructions or details for that appointment. So, if you're always saying, hey, have X, Y, and Z ready for this appointment, you can put that in there, and it will be included every time that appointment type is scheduled. Okay. Any questions? And if you've been here with us for a while now, you'll see the technician confirmation email. That used to be inside email settings. It's now been moved inside the appointment type, and you can find it here as well. Okay. Oop. Okay, so here you can see the examples of how it pulls it over. So you don't need separate email templates for every situation. You can just leverage this and have your basic templates, and then this will add in those additional messages. So you can see on the invitation underneath choose a time is where it inserted that notification message section. And then you can see above the reschedule or cancel button is where it included that information where it says, please have the following things prepared for our appointment. Okay. So one thing that I find people don't realize is that you can schedule multiple TimeZest meetings inside of a ticket. It's not a one appointment per ticket kind of thing. So if you need to do multiple meetings for it, feel free to send them out. Another thing, this last summer, we released the schedule appointment with a different contact. So that allows you to leave the primary contact on the ticket and then send the invitation to another contact in their company. It does need to be somebody who's in their company company record. And then you can schedule multiple meetings with all these different people, and we'll keep a log of who that is. So you can see who the resource is. There's different resources as well as different clients there, all listed for different times and dates. Okay. And those all have their own action drop down. So you can cancel that specific one, or you can copy the URL for that specific meeting. It's all separated. Okay, so how do we create the Outlook template? The Outlook template, that's all going to use your same email template, your same email templates. If you're talking about the calendar invite and all that, it's all defaulted in. That answer, or is there something else specific that you're looking for? No? Okay. Here is a quick little snapshot of our help center. If you haven't been there before, this is actually a great place to gather information. And so if you go to our Get Started Guides and Training, inside there you will find there's actually guides, which is kind of like my best practice guide for each professional, for each plan level. So you see there's one for free, advanced, and professional. And even though you may be set up, it might be good to just scan that and make sure you're not missing any key features that are available on your plan level. And then we put in there some user training. So we have one for ConnectWise and AutoTask. And so it goes over what's available in the pod or Insight, and you can you can use this with your technicians and pass that on for the individual user training. And then we have end user resources at the bottom there. So we have the campaign customer rollout templates, but we also have, if you have a client who would like some training or you'd like to use that, there's some there for the end user as well. Okay. All right, I'm a fast talker. We're at half an hour. Let's go through what you guys have questions for either myself or for Jason. What are you guys running into, and what are your favorite ways to use TimeZest that you have found has been helpful for your team? Panel scheduling, yeah. So panel scheduling it is a feature that allows you to schedule up to 3 resources all on the same call. So when you're inside the pod, you can select up to 3 resources, and it will look at all their calendars for common availability and provide that to the client. You can also leverage panel scheduling within the URL itself. So when you're in the URL generator, you can select up to 3 resources and it will schedule that meeting with all of those. Now with the new Outlook integration, if somebody their primary calendar is Outlook and the 2 other resources, their calendar is managed, it's still gonna work. It's just gonna schedule everybody on their individual calendars. Does that answer your question, James? Okay, Ken. Is ConnectWise under additional options? There's an option to schedule with different contact. Okay, so it's only pulling the first 10. You can actually type and pull up the name that you need specifically, right? So if you just type it in, it'll pull up, Zelda. So you'll be able to get down farther in the alphabet there.
Just to jump in for that one, the reason we don't show the full list is because there are certain clients that people have that may have 500 or even 1,000 contacts. So it's just not practical to always pull the full list. So that's why searching there is the primary way to find a different contact.
Yep. Hi. Okay, can you send a TimeZest invite based on the agreed upon date and time with the client contact instead of letting them pick something? Yeah, that was that tip that I shared earlier in the webinar. So what you can do is you can go through and use the copy URL, and then you just take that copied URL and you put it in the browser, pull it up, and you can select the date and time while you're on the phone and you already agreed upon it. It's going to show you what your availability is real time while you're looking at it. So that is the way you can do that. Okay, James, what is the best way to schedule with multiple people? Okay, so I'm guessing you're talking about multiple people on the end user side, on your client side, not internally. So this isn't something, yeah, okay. So this isn't something that currently we do as a built-in feature, right? So what you're gonna wanna do is that primary person, and if you think about the logic in it, it's because they're looking at your calendar for availability. We're not looking at their calendar for availability. So the primary contact needs to pick a time that works, and then they can forward the invite to that other contact to be included. Does that answer your question, James? Of course. Okay. Hi, Sean. So we want 2 texts on a ticket. Is there a way when we... Yep, Sean, that's our panel scheduling. So if you have 2 texts on the ticket and you need them both on the same meeting, where you're at the resource box, just select 2 texts and it'll show the common availability for both those resources. Yep, very easy to do. Does that answer your question, Sean? Any other questions? Hi, Leah. Okay. The person who has Zoom integration last Friday, status not changing, times booked. Be great to be able to delete and re-authenticate for Zoom rather than remove the whole integration.
Yeah, the reason we remove the integration is that if someone is scheduling when the integration is there and TimeZest tries to actually schedule a Zoom call with the Zoom and we don't have access to the API, then everything blows up. So that's why it gets turned off. But there are changes coming in the pipeline which will ameliorate that.
Okay, Alex, great question. After hours scheduling, is there a way to bypass business hours and schedule based on the appointment type? Yes. So when you're in the pod and you do additional options, I can try to show you guys here, but there is the date and time limits. Now, if you use a range, so if you say from 1600 to 2000, it's going to override your business hours and it's going to provide the availability that you selected there. So that is how you can do after hours appointments. And then that's also, if you want more information on that, if you go to our help center and you go to tips and tricks section, that's actually in there. And I have screenshots and all that to show you exactly how to do that. Any other questions? Yes. How can we ensure that local time zone is displayed when international clients are scheduling? So that works automatically. It's going to pull from their browser settings when they're looking at it. It's going to, go from what their specific settings are, and then it's going to do all the math for you, and it's going to schedule in your time zone that you need. So don't, it's nothing to worry about. We've got you covered there. And if you don't think it's working properly or anything like that, that yellow chat box goes to support. So always feel free to reach out, and we're happy to double check things and make sure everything's going, but it's going to do the math for you. Does that help? Any other questions that I get? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely reach out and we'll take a look at it. You can also reach support at help@timezest.com. So if you're not in app, you can just email us with some screenshots. They're always helpful. And specific examples. Oh, Sean, no problem. So when you're in the pod, where it says resource, just select multiple resources. You'll see, you'll be able to do that. Okay, Nicole, we had someone ask the other day if we could just send the shareable URL through a status in ConnectWise instead of having TimeZest sending the notification email. Nicole, what you would want to do is not the shareable URL, you'd want to use the URL-based scheduling. And the reason why is if you have it triggered to a status, there's already a ticket created, right? So we want that URL-based scheduling URL that has the token on the end to speak back to the ticket that you're already working in. So yes, you can do that. I would be cautious though that you don't get overwhelmed because you're going to have one appointment type, right? And you can go to one type of team. So just be careful that you're not boxing yourself in and then you start creating multiple ticket, status types and things like that to kind of give yourself more options. But yes, you can do that. Just use the URL-based scheduling, not the shareable URL, because the shareable will create a new ticket. Of course. Any other questions? All right. Who has something where they're using TimeZest in maybe a way that we haven't thought of or talked about? What's your favorite way? Come on, you guys. Let's see. Is there a way to avoid scheduling over Outlook or Teams meetings? We have Outlook and Teams syncing. Okay. Yeah, Danish, that's the Outlook 365 integration that we have. If you set that up, we're going to check Outlook to make sure that nothing's being booked over. Okay. So go to integrations, and then you'll see the Outlook 365 integration, set that up, and then we'll start reading those Outlook calendars to make sure there's nothing conflicting. Awesome. Yeah, of course. Any other questions? No one's got any? Oh, yay, Ken. Okay, we have been using this for scheduling job interviews with applicants. Yes, awesome. So sending out shareable URLs, you can have it create an activity or to do, or if you don't use your PSA calendar, you can have it use the Outlook and create an Outlook appointment for you to do that. That's awesome. Thanks, Ken. Anyone else? I'm challenging you all to participate. You're using it in lieu of Calendly? Well, I personally love that, so that's awesome. That's good. I'm glad it's working, Brent. Thanks for joining. It's good to see you here. Okay, we have created a team template that includes everyone on the help desk team. So when client schedules, they can pick from everyone's time for our more options. Yes, team scheduling is awesome for that. So you don't need to pigeonhole into one resource. You can have it auto dispatch throughout a group. And don't be afraid to like break it up. It doesn't need to be your whole help desk. You can break it up by specialty or tier levels, and then have more control over which resources it's pulling from, right? We use it to allow our clients to schedule a call with our technicians. It really helps. We're not calling and interrupting our client's day. Yeah, so instead of calling them and chasing them, you just let them schedule on their time. And the good thing for that, is to keep in mind your no response timelines. I think a lot of people kind of bypass that, and it has moved inside of the individual appointment types now. So you can set that to be, I typically recommend 3 or 4 days. We want to bug them enough, but not too much. And we want to make sure that we kind of follow up. So make sure your board configurations and your status configurations are set up so that your tickets aren't just sitting in a waiting status or anything like that. Make sure that all that's worked out. Okay. Hi, Cody. Good to see you. We just switched our VCIO and CO from Calendly to use the Office 365 scheduling. Woohoo! We are also using panel scheduling for our interview scheduling instead of chasing down multiple people's availability. Awesome. Glad to see that's working well. It's fantastic. Scott, it's useful to know that just generating and copying the URL doesn't set up the automatic client reminders. Yes, yep. Like sending a request to client. That's awesome. I'm glad that's helpful. Yeah, you'll have to, if you use the copy URL, so he's talking about the URL inside the ticket or generate URL, it doesn't trigger the reminders, right? So if you missed that, you'll want to do some manual follow-up there because we don't have a set go time, right? So we don't have a time to start that clock off of, we don't know if you sent it just now or, 2 days from now. So. Hi, Erin, good to see you. With the 365 integration, is there any way to have it see tentatively scheduled appointments as available? Okay, any type of unavailable. See any type of unavailable. Okay, this is a feature that's been around for a while now, and it's actually it's available both in oh wait, would that work for 365? Now you have me question myself. You
want me to jump in?
Yeah, because now I'm like thinking that 365 piece, and I'm not clear.
So yeah, so as Johannah was saying, there is the ability in TimeZest to configure appointment types to either treat tentative appointments, which are available in ConnectWise Manage and Office 365 as blocking times, or treat them as tentative and be able to schedule over them. So with Office 365, you can set the event type for any event. And if it's set as tentative, then this tentative logic comes into it. If the event is set as a free time, then TimeZest will ignore it. And then the other type of event in Office 365, like out of office or the normal busy, will be always blocked by TimeZest.
Awesome. Thanks for asking that, Erin. I just automatically thought it would work, but as soon as he asked, I was like, wait, does it? Okay, hi, Mike. Good to see you. Any way to have a buffer time added to manage calendar without adding it to the client? We use the buffer to account for the drive time, but it doesn't block future appointments from scheduling over that initial buffer. Okay. It shouldn't be providing any sort of buffer or anything on the client side. They're not going to see that. That's on your side. So I'm not completely clear what you mean there, but it will be able to schedule over because it's not like a hard buffer, right? This is free space between your meetings. And I see Jason has something to add there.
Yeah, so this is something that we've called like hard buffer times. It's a feature that's been requested a few times where we actually like create the buffer times in the ConnectWise Manage calendar, so they're blocked out. For example, if you're scheduling an on-site appointment, you want the drive time before and after to be blocked out. It's not something we've built yet. It's on the roadmap. I couldn't tell you when we'll get to it, but yeah, it's something we're sort of thinking about.
Okay. Thanks for plugging that in, Joe. I appreciate it. It's in the chat if you want to go in there and vote up that feature request. Danish, is it possible for TimeZest to automatically pick up on on-site appointments and not schedule or allow another remote session to be scheduled on that same day? No, it's not going to differentiate and say, oh, there's already an on-site appointment scheduled today, so nothing else can be scheduled. But one way that I have set that up, if you have an on-site, you can block where your on-site appointment respects can schedule over tentative appointments, and you can have that a block on your calendar that's tentative. We can work out a workaround. If you want to reach out to help@timezest.com, you and I can kind of work through something there. I've done something similar, a little workaround there that we can try to do, but that specific feature is not available. And you can submit that or see if there's one on the feature request page. Yeah. Yep, of course. Any other questions or ways you guys are leveraging TimeZest that maybe we're not thinking about? I love pulling from our customers and seeing what they're coming up with. anything that I can help with that maybe others would benefit from, some other features that maybe you've heard about that you haven't seen or you don't know about, have a question about? No? You guys are all rock stars? All right. Oh, here's some more. Okay. Multiple internal resource addition times us up a few notches. Okay, awesome. Yep, the panel scheduling, that's been around a while now. I think people kind of miss that it's there, but yeah, you can definitely, and it's up to 3 resources, okay? So keep that in mind when you're doing it. Joel, non-technical question. Does anyone have any tips on communicating the increased value of TimeZest workflow where particularly our technology adverse? Okay. I'm guessing you're talking about trying to roll it out to techs or to users in your company that are hesitant to the change. Or maybe even you have a client that is not wanting to, go through and do it. So, no, Joel, while you have them on the phone, schedule it for them. That tip that I showed you, using the URL or the copy generate URL. And while you have them on the phone, schedule it for them. Say, hey, it looks here, I have Tuesday at 1, and I'll send you the confirmation email and just schedule it for them. Sometimes it's easier just to, to hold the hand, right? You think that'd work for you? Okay. David, is there a way that you could send specific time ranges? For example, if you want to schedule on-sites for 4 hours, could it be set to offer 9 a.m. to... So David, that you're going to want to use inside the pod. If you do show additional options, there's date ranges and time ranges. So you could say show between Tuesday and Thursday of next week between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And we will show them the availability only on those days and only for those time ranges. Okay, does that answer your question? Any other questions? Yes, awesome. Good, glad I could help. Okay, a little shameless plug here while you guys are coming up with any other questions. If you didn't know, I do provide free consulting for all of our clients. So if you ever want to get together and do a system review and kind of just scan through, make sure you guys are using all the features available on your plan, or talk through maybe a plan level if you're using our advanced or free plan and you want to look at what's available or what's come out since, we lose track of what new features come out, right? So I'm here to help. We can also talk through different use cases. If you have a specific situation where you're like, I need to solve this, I'm here to help. So reach out to help@timezest.com or the yellow chat box in the bottom right corner of the app, and just let me know and I'll send you over my calendar link to schedule. Okay, any closing questions? We have just a few moments here and then we'll get this out. Just so everyone is aware, I will be sending out a recording. It'll take me a few days to get that out. And then all our recordings also go onto our YouTube channel. And so you can see our past webinar, which we did in December, Jason and I, and you'll be able to go there and see the new features, and also we talked about like what's coming up next. So you can get a little sneak peek there. That's all still very valid and up to date. Any closing questions or anything like that that I can help you guys with today? Nope, chat's gone quiet too. Of course, Joel, it's always good to see you. Thank you so much for participating, you guys. I'm always here to help, so feel free to reach out if you guys have any questions or anything, and don't hesitate. I'd rather you ask than sit on something and stew about it. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll be sending out the recording soon, okay?